They say opposites attract.
Well, how about these opposites? Daddies and sons.
You're listening to Daddy and Son.
A podcast where we explore the dynamics of daddy and son relationships, multi-generational views.
And everything else in between.
G'day. The last time I took an Air Canada flight was 2018. It was shocking. Lousy seats, lousy service, lousy food, and ridiculously overpriced. Have things changed? We're about to find out.
Welcome back to another episode of Daddy and Son. My name is Alex.
And I'm Norm.
And you may have noticed that we have been away for a few weeks. You want to tell the people what we've been up about, Norm?
Well, we were on the same airplane about a month ago, and whether they know we were away or not, we were. So, and that's going to kind of be the topic of our discussion tonight when we get around to it.
Oh, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had a really good time. I think this is I can't believe it. Like, we've known each other for so many years, but this was our first time traveling somewhere together.
We were not only on the same trip, we were on the same plane. We were in the same class of service.
Yeah.
I mean, you might as well have been 25 miles away because I don't think I talked to you during the trip. But what we did, we had a great evening one evening.
And
Yes,
and
we
I
did.
think
We
that
did.
that is the difference, honestly, when you're in business class versus when you're
You don't
in
pay any
econ.
attention to anybody else.
But
We'll talk about this in a moment.
but how have you been? Because it's been almost a week since we've been back now.
I can't believe how fast the time is going by, but you know what? Spring is, I think, starting to happen here in Toronto, although it's been so cold. And I haven't
Yeah.
had a chance to ride my new bike.
Oh, that is true. You did mention your new bike in
Mm-hmm.
in our wellness segment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how long have you had that now? Like 3 weeks?
About that. I was out one night when it was relatively dry, but anyway, we have a lot of spring and summer ahead of us, so
I
get
know.
ready.
Don't even remind me about that. Well, for me, I have actually been pretty. It's been a very crazy week for me. Just things have been getting so much busier and crazier.
Why
But
is life like that? Why are we so busy?
I don't know if it's just an age thing, like, or just an era thing. Like, we're going through this era of young people need to be hustling. You need to have a full-time job, a part-time job, a side hustle, and still find time to look good and date and go to the gym.
Well, you do that.
But it's starting to catch up with me because, when I tell you that the compromise of sleep, and I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like everyone is on edge these days.
Hmm. Well, that may have something to do with why we're having an issue on the topic of tonight, which is really about customer satisfaction. But I have a question.
Uh-huh.
What are we drinking tonight?
Oh, would you look at that? So today we're drinking courtesy of you, my lovely Norm, a Castilian Rioja, 2019 Spanish vintage.
Very nice.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's very, 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 very bold, very rich, very dark and robust. Absolutely delicious.
Okay, this isn't a wine review show.
I know it's not a wine review show. However, we are us. And before we get started and I hand this over to you, I want to give a special shout out to two of the ladies that I sat beside on the way back to Toronto. One being Miss Rose, and the other one, I don't want to mess up her name. I really don't want to mess up her name. And I'm so sorry I forgot your name. She is so lovely. If you ever happen to be listening to this podcast or somebody who knows her happens to be listening to this podcast, because we did end up talking about the podcast on the way over.
Really? And I presume you were in economy coming back.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
And she was telling me about how her stepson lives in quote unquote alternative lifestyle. Whatever that is supposed to mean.
I don't know that she's going to be listening to this podcast, but possibly her son will be.
That's what I'm saying. So if he just happens to be listening, I just want to just give her a shout out, her and Mrs. Rose and Mr. Rose, who was behind us. Miss Rose is such a sweet soul. She's one of those older ladies that will offer you like a mint.
Oh, really?
She did offer me a mint from her bag. It was the sweetest thing ever. So I just want to give them a shout out.
What had you been eating before you got on the plane?
How dare you?
All right, let's get... So you had a good trip coming back. We didn't have such a great trip going down. And here's what we want to talk about tonight, folks. This idea for this podcast came from our flight together going down to Jamaica about a month ago. We both upgraded to business class. Very modest price, a nice big 787 jet. So that's one of those seats where you can lie back and pretend you're in the sun and have a great time and a nice meal. And
they don't wake you up like back in economy where you're lying down and like at 40 minutes before you're supposed to land, they're waking you up. Sir, you need to get up. No, this one you land like laying stretched out. So they hate you back there.
Well, here's where we're going with this tonight. When Alex and I discussed our experience on our flight, Alex didn't seem very pleased, and I was quite happy with it. So I thought, I wonder if there's a difference in the way younger and older folks experience customer satisfaction. Do they have different expectations? Why did you not enjoy what I thought was a perfectly satisfactory, enjoyable flight? How can you complain about having a mimosa at 10:30 in the morning when someone's putting it in front of you and asking if what else you'd like to drink?
Well, let me ask you this question. Because separate and apart from the mimosa part, what did you enjoy about your experience? What did you enjoy about the customer service that morning?
I enjoy being catered to. I enjoy having somebody put a very nice meal, very well presented. And by the way, it was very good. I think I had the veal or something, red meat of some kind. And the wine was delicious. The movie was fine. The audio was great. I thought it was a perfect flight. I only wish it had been across the ocean instead of just down to Jamaica, because it was only 4 hours long. But I didn't see anything to complain about. And that's not always the case when you travel. I know that, but we didn't have a problem. I didn't have a problem. Okay. What was did you have a different expectation? Maybe that's the way to put it.
Okay, so straight off the bat, for me, it was with the flow of service. The young miss came, she, came up to me and said, have you taken a look at the menu yet? I said to her, no, I haven't. Could you please just tell me? And my hands were full too. I'll never forget I won't forget my hands were full. And I said to her, could you just tell me what is on the menu? I'll tell you what I want. And she said to me, read the menu. I'll come back. And
that would have put me off too.
That was a big turn off for me. And I'll tell you, obviously I can read, and obviously that's not the point. Sometimes
business class was full, by the way, just so for context.
But even then, I don't think that quite matters. My mother was the first person in my family to have a university education. And I think the only of her siblings that have a PhD. I used to get babysit by my grandfather a lot as a kid growing up. And he would oftentimes, when helping me with my homework, turn around and pose a question to me like, what is this supposed to be? And I didn't know. My grandfather, who was a farmer, I didn't know that oftentimes when my grandfather was sitting there and helping me with my homework and posing questions back to me and asking me to explain it to him, was my grandfather learning from me because my grandfather did not know how to read.
Wow.
With that being said, and again, I'm not saying that this is the situation here.
But she did assume you could read the menu.
She assumed I could read the menu,
But
or
not
she
everybody
assumed
could.
I could read the menu in the languages that was presented, which is English and French. Again, I'm not saying this is or is not the case for me. However, the menu only has 3 things on it.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about
So you were
the chicken or the pasta,
Okay.
but it only had the veal, the chicken parmesan, and the pasta. Those were the only things on it. If you're taking orders and I say you see me with my hands full and I'm trying to settle into my seat.
Honey, you could have said, I'll let you know in a moment. Could you come back in a second and I'll have a look at the menu?
Oh, no, which I did. But that's besides the point.
No, you asked her what was on the menu.
And she should have been able to give me an answer.
She would have given you
her-
chicken or pasta, sir.
I think when it comes on to a certain level of service, and I don't know if this comes from me coming from a service-oriented country or a hospitality-oriented country or tourism-oriented country, where that is the major export of the GDP.
Yeah. You expect a little bit better treatment.
That is the type of service I'm expecting. And I also am comparing it to my most recent flight, as you know,
And
which
you
was
have done
through
a lot.
Etihad.
And you have done a lot of travel, and you have other good customer service experiences to compare it to. And that's legitimate. That was one of the points I was thinking. Maybe that's why you weren't too happy. Was there anything else about that experience that morning that you didn't like? You found?
Yes.
Was that it?
No.
Oh, the list continues,
No,
folks.
there were.
Maybe I'm just a very agreeable, nice guy. People like to answer my questions. I mean, I look at the menu right away. I don't have my hands full of things to do. I look at what's on the menu. I know within 2 seconds what I'm going to eat, because
Right.
I know if you don't know, somebody else is going to grab that choice before they come back to you. Anyway, so what was the other stuff on your plate?
So the other thing is that, when you go into first class, there's usually bottles of water that is available. I don't know about
There should be.
you.
I don't remember if there was one or not.
I noticed that some people had, I didn't have.
Uh-oh. By the way, just for context, I had been assigned the seat that Alex was on, and when I realized it was where it was, when I checked in that morning, I asked for a different seat. So perhaps they were trying to, do something to me and didn't realize that you were the one that was going to be the victim of their lack of attention. I don't know. Anyway, you didn't get a bottle of water.
So I didn't get a bottle of water, so I asked if I could have some water, to which...
Reasonable request.
Which is a reasonable request. People get dehydrated on flights. Not even a lip balm was provided. So she...
No, lip balm is not provided, sir, but we encourage you to pick up your own for future reference.
Well, the last couple business class flights that I flew since this year, they provided hand cream and lip balm. Those are simple essentials, I think. But again, I digress.
They go in the little bags that they give you too.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, we didn't get one of those on the flight.
I know.
Did we? No,
we did not.
We did not get. I feel like banging this glass table.
I'm telling you, like little essentials. So again, maybe this is just me nitpicking again based on other business class flights that I've done recently, and by no means am I comparing Etihad to Air Canada. I don't think the two are comparable.
Well, it was not a super international flight.
But even if it's not a super international flight, I've done business class from Toronto to Vancouver,
Yes.
where I've had much better service. And again, something as simple as asking for a bottle of water, which to date, as I'm sitting here with you,
You still have not
I
received?
have not received.
Well, we must approach Air Canada and ask for a bottle of water. You did get your bags back this time, though, did you?
I did get my bags
Because I know
back.
you've had that problem. But then, you know what? Here it is. I thought maybe we have a difference in approach, but I would have been ticked about those things. Although I would have tried to solve the problem.
Well, here's the thing. I'm here to experience a superior class of service. I'm not here to be problem solving.
Now that one, that's a good.
I
That's a quotable quote. I like that.
let's put that on a shirt. I think that's fair.
What's the word? What is it? I'm here to experience good customer service. I'm not
A
here to problem.
superior class of service.
I'm not here to problem solve.
I'm not here to problem solve for this multinational Star Alliance company. No, absolutely not. If whatever it is that Air Canada is doing, if they need to bring in some consultancy to kind of shape up their hospitality service, or they need someone to come in and do an audit of their quality control. I don't know what it is, but I was just not impressed.
Well, what you're talking about, and a friend of mine in the United States did this for United Airlines for a few years. He was a secret flyer.
That's a thing?
Yeah, there was. They cut the program
I didn't
back.
even know that was a job.
But yes, he would purchase a ticket that looked like a regular. This is the days of paper tickets, so you could see who had issued the ticket, and so it wasn't issued by the airline. He went out and purchased it and was reimbursed. He sat in first class on these great big long 8-hour trips, and he's a good writer and a good commentator, and he would write up reports on the service. And that's what you're recommending Air Canada needs to do.
Well, yes, because
If they're not already doing it.
And do it at random, because this was extremely disappointing, and I think a major part of my disappointment started from way before then. It started from in the lounge, and I think we spoke about this. This I actually did even took a picture of it, and I sent it to Air Canada directly.
The lounge? You had a problem in the lounge?
It was filthy. It was absolutely filthy. The washroom didn't even have toilet paper. And it was 7 a.m? I mean, how is it that it's it's not yet midday and you don't have toilet paper in the toilet? It's like, what are we giving? Has hygiene exit the chat? Like what is it giving? I was very disappointed in the overall experience from start to finish. I think the only saving grace was the friendliness of the
crew,
the head of the cabin crew.
Yeah. No, the people were nice.
I can't remember what his name is. Shout out to him. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
A really nice guy.
So maybe what you do is you're more observant than I am, or things piss you off more.
Well, I
didn't have the experience in the lounge.
I don't even know if it's things that piss me off more. I just believe that
your expectations, your standards are maybe
I think my standards
a little higher.
Are
more exact, because what you're saying,
I think my standards are, I don't even think they're that high. I think they're pretty much benchmarked for what should be
for that class of service, for what you're paying.
Exactly.
And there's a sort of thing of excellence that you did not see.
Exactly.
And that is not acceptable for an international airline.
That is the premier airline of the country.
Yeah.
It literally has our name on it, and that for me is embarrassing, because for this great nation of Canada, what we will not have is subpar service being stamped on our name.
Well, let me tell you about the business class service I had coming back from London a few years ago, and consistent with I was sitting up at the front. In fact, same kind of seat that I had going down to Jamaica, right up at the bulkhead, right number 1A, 1B, whatever it was, right on the window. Mm-hmm. And I had been eating in the lounge prior to that, and I wasn't particularly hungry when we got on the plane. Well, of course, they start feeding you right away, And I kind of said, I wonder if you could, serve me last. Well, that seemed like a difficult, I remember thinking, why is this a difficult request for this person? This is very simple. I've eaten already. I don't want to eat right away. Serve the rest of the cabin first. Bring it to me last. Oh, well, we don't do it that way, sir. Oh, really? I don't know if that was his response. And point being, maybe I need to be a little bit more, maybe us older folks are used to being told, hey, this is the way it is, folks. Thank you. And the younger generation isn't quite ready to accept the answers the way they used to be.
No, we're not. We're just not. We're not. Not in this economy. No.
And why is that?
Because we're working. I think the younger generation, where we've been told for so long, that we are a lazy generation. We have been told for so long that we're an entitled generation. So, when we fork up our hard-earned money and the effort to be where, in a particular, again, to be receiving a superior class of service, that's the expectation. We're not expecting to be turning left and experiencing the same type of service that we would if we turned right.
What was your experience coming back?
From London?
No, from Jamaica when you were in economy. Did you have any negative vibes from that one?
You know what? I didn't.
And why do you think that was?
That's because it met my expectation.
There you go. So it was the gap between expectations and experience that caused the dissatisfaction going down. And when you're in economy, you don't expect as much. You're going to have a little less room. But you know what? It really doesn't make a difference. As long as you're comfortable in your seat and you don't have anybody beside you snoring or farting or anything like that.
Just a nice old lady chatting me up and offering me a mint from her bag.
Wow.
And not because I had fish before. How dare you?
Sorry, I didn't mean to imply anything. And I didn't ask you. I didn't know what you had before, but if that's what you had before, perhaps that's why she was offering the mint. I don't know.
But yeah, I think generally when it comes on to service and expectations, and just for Air Canada in general, my experience thus far, and this is not me by any means pooping all over Air Canada, because I love Air Canada. I've invested a lot into Air Canada, making sure that primarily it is the airline that I use.
Sure.
Invest into the Airplan Points program.
Right. When I bought that bottle of wine a few minutes ago,
I got
a little bit closer to getting a free trip.
Exactly. I invest a lot into the ecosystem or the economy.
You have a great credit card, is what you're trying to tell us, that gives you points for sitting on your butt. That's the kind of travel I want to do too.
I mean, it's been very very useful.
You see, he's spoiled, folks. He's spoiled. He can get Aeroplan points while he's not doing anything. He gets more points on the ground than he does in the air, and he's still not happy when he's up there. Well, you know what? I'm going to say that I thought we would have more disagreement about this, but I think we're kind of, you know what? Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about restaurant service for a minute.
All right,
Maybe we should do that. Maybe let's take a break and we'll come back and talk about that. What do you say?
Absolutely. Be right back.
How do you ensure and make accountable the people that you're paying for a service to do what you want them to do? And how do you deal with, I'm going to use the word attitude, because that's how some of this stuff comes across. And you shared with me an experience recently when somebody asked you,
oh yeah,
tell us about that.
When I was coming back from London to Toronto, I think this was in February. It was February, right? And the flight, so my port my USB port wasn't working. I was trying to charge my phone. This was before we took off. So I asked the flight attendant about it, and he was basically telling me that it's supposed to work. Maybe it's going to start working when the plane is no longer grounded, when it's up in the air. To which my response was, well, I've tried it before and it's worked in the past. Why is it not working now? To which he proceeded to ask me, have you been up here before?
Which was a little impudent, as my father used to use that.
Very.
Impudent. You look that up if anybody doesn't know what it means, but it means basically you're being insulted, in case you're wondering.
Yes. And I was I was so taken aback that I remember just being like, I kept quiet and just kept it to myself. And it really, I mean, not for long, because the Prosecco's kept coming.
That part of the experience was quite satisfactory, by the way.
Quite satisfactory.
And who needs a phone when you're 3 drinks into a whatever that is? At
well, probably not then, but you need it when you land to call your Uber.
Well, but you know what? I recently wrote an article for a client dealing with what I call contingency planning. And you know, the point is, you don't always know, especially when you're traveling, how things are going to work out. So suggestion, before you leave for the airport, charge your phones, charge your iPad. Make sure you've got extra cash in case something. Anticipate that something is not going to quite happen the way you want it to. In other words, I hate to use the word, begin to problem solve before you even start your trip or before you even go to where you're going to go for whatever customer.
I get that, and I completely agree. What I don't agree with is, again, you should be paying for a superior service, and something as simple as an electronic port being in working order. I've been on flights before, and this I believe it was a United Airlines flight. It was a flight from Munich to Denver, and
they have a hub in Denver. That's very possible.
And the entertainment system wasn't working. The television wasn't working.
Yeah,
and remember
lousy.
that
That's lousy.
They gave us
a voucher,
and apologized that the entertainment system was inoperable for that flight.
That's nice. I had a similar experience once. I got bumped from a business class trip from San Francisco to Toronto on United.
How does that happen?
They changed I was in row 4 in business class, and they changed the aircraft, and there were only 3 rows in business class. So I got up to the gate and was told, Mr. Cheeseman, we're very sorry. But you know what they did? They gave me, I think, a free flight anytime within a year. Which, by the way, I never got to use. But anyway, that's another. But you're absolutely right. So how does a company, in this case, what do we do? Like, you can't go around educating somebody on the plane or in a restaurant how to behave. How do we get the behavior we want?
Well, here's the thing. I don't know how we are hiring these days for these customer service based positions. I don't know. But I think we need to start going back to that place of excellence.
It's all training.
It's all training.
It's training. It's
and
also
it's
culture.
Still there. It's still there for, like I said. I'll just go back to my most previous experience before the one that I had with Air Canada with Etihad, which
they're a very good airline. Right?
Yeah,
they're a very highly rated airline. Okay.
Through the Emirates, through Abu Dhabi, and they were so like I was 1, 2, 3, 4 flights that I did with not Emirates, with Etihad, and every single one consistently amazing service. Do they have the booze flowing like Air Canada? Absolutely not. It's a Muslim country, so be prepared that you're not gonna get no more than maybe 1 drink.
Oh, is that right?
On a 17-hour flight.
Well, that's where you have to go up to but they do have those little bars at the front that you go help yourself.
But they do have those little bars at the front, and you don't help yourself, somebody serves you.
Well, that's fine, but you have the option to go and refill. That's fine.
And for me, I'm just again just thinking out loud. This does boil down to one of those things where, okay, what are we presenting? How are we presenting ourselves? When was the last time we've done quality assurance? When was the last time we did quality control, and how is that being done?
Well, if anybody from Air Canada is listening, you're getting some very good pointers tonight on maybe how to approach your training. However, let's remember, in fairness, Air Canada is rated as one of the top North American airlines, and we don't want to crap all over them tonight, but we're using that as an example to say, hey, listen, sometimes you don't get what you expect. Sometimes you get attitude from people that are helping you or waiting on you, and you got to deal with that. I'll tell you what really bugs me, switching over to restaurants, which we were going to talk about, is when somebody goes by my table, a waiter or waitress goes by my table 3 or 4 times, ignores the fact that my water glass is empty or my coffee cup is almost, 2/3 empty, and they don't even bother to ask me if I want more. Come on, that should be automatic. In the United States, that they're right on. Would you agree? Well, my experience in the U.S. is they're much better at that stuff than they are.
Well, I can't say that I've had much experience with eating out in the United States. I don't travel to the United States very often. I'm more of a European person.
Well,
But
yes, which means you're flying a lot more than you're driving. Understood. And if you've ever driven with Alex, you'd much rather fly with him than drive with him.
the shade. But yes, I do agree that is, well, for me, it's not even so much the noticing that because in a lot of parts of Europe, they don't even give you water. Water is something that you pay for additionally, with the exception of in England. In England, they do give you water, but I've realized in France and even in Germany, they don't give you water. Actually, that's a lie.
Okay.
In England, they don't give you water either. They don't. It's very rare you'll go to somewhere and they give you water. You have to ask for it or you buy it separately. That is, but what they're on the mark with is if they see your drink is down or your cocktail is down, they're quick to offer you
a refill.
Okay.
Well, that's very important as well. And speaking of refills, my wine glass may need one shortly, although yours looks so fine.
And one of the things that I do notice is that the tipping culture here in North America, I think, has pretty much evolved into like a monster. And I don't know if it's the pandemic that was the catalyst that or the Frankenstein that started this monster.
I know. What happened to 10%?
But
it's now 18% when you open
18,
up.
where are you going? Because the places that I'm going, it starts at 20.
Well,
sometimes going up to 35.
You see, the sons definitely have higher tastes and higher expectations than the older folks. I tip 15% flat. I don't include the tax. So I go back to the number that's before the tax. I say, what's about 10 or 15% of that? And that's what I give. I ignore the percentages. Unless it's a business class. Unless it's my business is paying for it. And sometimes I'm not quite as careful. But anyway.
I just think for me, if you're going to be providing subpar service, and again, going back to the whole thing about service industry, particularly with restaurants, a lot of people who are going into service, the service industry these days, seem to only be doing it for a job. It's not, and I find that to be almost like a slap in the face to people who go to school to study hospitality, people who this is their bread and butter. This is not a joke. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And if you're going to be out here, and fine, we have a tipping culture here in North America, not just in Canada, but in the US as well. That is fine. I'm not going to knock tipping culture. What I am knocking is a culture of entitlement. Yeah. Tips, I believe, are not something that you deserve. I believe it's a bonus. It's something
it's an add-on.
It's an add-on.
And it should be a function of the experience that you've had while you were in that
It's
venue.
exactly, it's value added.
Yeah, yeah.
It is value added. It's just strange to me. You go to get a cup of coffee, and then they turn around the till, and they're like 20%, and I'm like, but for what? You just made the coffee and put it in a cup and give it to me. I haven't even sat down. You know,
This is the Starbucks thing, you mean?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Or you were at
You know,
Subway and they make a sandwich. They haven't even put extra veggies or anything on it. And anyone who knows anything about Subway know how they're very scanty with the tuna.
Oh, yeah.
And then they turn around, turn the till, 25%.
Well,
I'm like, for what?
The advantages of paying with cash. I actually told somebody the other day I wanted change.
What year is it? 2002?
Well, okay, now let's not go there. I still use cash for a lot of things. In fact, I was in a little local restaurant the other day, and I think I was having breakfast at Fran's, which is a little local breakfast place in the city of Toronto, and it came to something around $17. And, the waiter said, shall I bring a
Card machine.
A card machine, or we love cash here. And it turned out I didn't have a $20 bill on me at the time. But people do use cash. Don't denigrate it. It's good, and it saves businesses money. And that's one thing that a younger person should be concerned about.
I think this to me is clearly, and if I'm wrong, and there are any younger persons under 35 listening, just let me know if I'm wrong. But I honestly believe that this is a generational thing, because the only people in my life that I know still walk around with cash are people over 50. Are people who are used to leaving the house with a little cash in their pocket, or going on vacation with the currency in a little envelope. Don't give me that look.
This is, maybe this is a generational thing. I like having cash.
Then what's the point in walking around? What's the point in having credit cards and debit cards?
Because I'm a small business person, and I have to pay 4 and 5% sometimes when somebody gives me a credit card. That eats into my profits. So I appreciate somebody paying me the full price for what I'm charging them, rather than having them to pay in such a way that I've got to remit 4 or 5% of my profit back to a financial institution. So I'm taking the position that A, I like cash, B, and by the way, I don't mind using a credit card. But I do, when I go to the market, which you live very close to here in this great city, I use cash in a lot of places because these are the small businesses.
Okay.
Yep. Loblaws, I use a credit card. Just anybody wants
You know
to
what I like? When you go to some restaurants and they will say to you, if you pay cash, you pay 10% less. And they're always constantly reminding me.
That is fantastic.
And
Wish
I
more
like
would do
that.
that, right?
And that way, okay, so I know that if I'm paying by card,
There's an incentive.
There's an incentive to pay by cash. And if I'm paying by card, then there's a markup there that I have to pay, that 10% that I have to pay to offset them taking back to the financial institution. And it goes back to the same thing about even with the tip.
Mm-hmm.
And gratuity. How is it in a situation where, and some restaurants do this, I've found that I even discovered this recently with my girlfriend Max. We went out a Tuesday night, we saw 18% gratuity show up on the bill, and then they still turn around and ask for a tip. It just didn't make any sense to me. Why is that? And I'm okay with paying the 18% gratuity, but then why then turn around and ask for the tip? Why not just build that into the price of the food on the menu? Or
which they do in Europe.
Just make gratuity standard right across the board. Make an 18 or 15% gratuity standard right across the board, and then stop flipping the till and asking people for tips on top of it. Well, it's unfathomable. It's unconscionable, and it's going to lead me personally, and I've said this to my girlfriends, it's actually leading me to become more resentful to eating out these days.
That works against the whole restaurant industry, which we need to support. But let me ask a question. As we come back to, and we near the end of our evening together here, would you have tipped any of the staff on the Air Canada flight we flew on a few weeks ago?
No.
Hmm.
No. I would even say maybe to the head of the cabin crew for keeping the drinks flowing, because he kept topping up my prosecco like it was nobody's business. But again, when you pay that extra money for an upgrade, or if you buy a business class ticket outright, it's expected.
It was a very cheap upgrade price, just out of curiosity, for
It's
information.
it's still
No,
a
you're right.
part of the standard that should be set, regardless if it's a $300 upgrade or a $200 upgrade or a $500 upgrade or $700 upgrade. It doesn't matter. That still surpasses the price of a bottle of prosecco. So I'm sorry, no, that does it should it that's something that should be built into this. It should be baked into the standard of service.
Son, what I think I've learned tonight is maybe I need to be a little bit more
Critical.
critical, a little bit more politely demanding and expecting when something doesn't quite meet my service. And there's a little voice that says to me, no, Norman, don't bug them about this. You're more inclined to say, excuse me, you forgot something here. And maybe we need to be a little bit more about that. Sorry.
Your face again. I'm sorry. Oh my gosh.
Anyway, well, we've had a good time tonight. I don't think we've solved this issue completely, but
that's a conversation for another podcast. Any final words that you want to say for your audience?
I just want to say welcome to spring. Be patient, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're listening to this during the summer, enjoy.
Okay. Well, you heard that. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you made it all the way to the end, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Daddy and Son. If you have any questions for the show, send them over to daddyandsonpodcast@gmail.com. That's DADDYANDSON podcast@gmail.com. Until next time, sons, be good to your daddies.
And daddies, be kind to your sons.
Amen. Bye for now.